The morning sun cast long shadows across the rolling hills of Boeotia as two armies prepared to clash in what would become one of history's most shocking military upsets. The year was 371 BCE, and the mighty Spartan war machine, undefeated on land for over 2 centuries, stood poised to crush yet another rebellion against their dominance. But the men they faced across that dusty plain possessed something the Spartans had never encountered before, a revolutionary tactical innovation that would shatter the myth of Spartan invincibility forever. For generations, the crimson-cloaked warriors of Sparta had been the undisputed masters of Greek warfare. Their phalanx formation had crushed Persian hordes at Thermopylae, demolished Athenian hopes at Mantinea, and struck terror into the hearts of enemies across the Mediterranean. The very sight of their bronze-tipped spears glinting in formation had sent armies fleeing before battle was even joined. But on this fateful day at Leuctra, everything would change. The architect of this transformation was a man whose name would echo through military history, Epaminondas of Thebes. Unlike the traditional generals of his era who relied on inherited tactics and brute force, Epaminondas possessed a mind that could see beyond conventional warfare. He understood that defeating the Spartans would require more than courage or superior numbers. It would demand a complete reimagining of how battles were fought. Standing before his assembled Theban army, Epaminondas gazed across the battlefield at the approaching Spartan formation. The enemy advanced with their characteristic discipline, shields locked, spears lowered, presenting an iron wall that had proven impenetrable for over 200 years. But hidden within the Theban ranks was a weapon that would expose the fatal flaw in this seemingly perfect system, a tactical innovation so radical that even Epaminondas' own allies questioned its wisdom. To understand the magnitude of what was about to unfold, we must first grasp the world that created this moment. Ancient Greece in the 4th century BCE was a tapestry of competing city-states, each jealously guarding its independence while constantly scheming against its neighbors. For decades, Sparta had dominated this chaotic landscape through military supremacy that seemed almost supernatural in its effectiveness. The foundation of Spartan power lay in their revolutionary approach to warfare. While other Greek armies were composed of citizen soldiers who returned to their farms and workshops after battle, Sparta had created the world's first professional military state. Every male Spartan was a warrior from birth to death, trained from childhood in the brutal art of war. Their society existed solely to produce the most effective killing machine the ancient world had ever seen. The Spartan phalanx was the physical manifestation of this military culture. 8 rows deep, with each warrior's shield protecting not only himself but the man to his right, it created an impenetrable wall of bronze and iron. The front ranks bristled with 18-foot spears that could impale enemies before they came close enough to strike. Behind them, additional ranks added weight and momentum, turning the entire formation into a human battering ram that could crush any opposition through sheer disciplined pressure. This tactical system had proven so effective that it became the standard throughout the Greek world. Battle after battle had demonstrated its superiority, and military theorists considered it the ultimate evolution of infantry warfare. The Spartans had perfected what appeared to be an unbeatable formula, until a brilliant Theban general recognized its one critical weakness. Epaminondas understood that the traditional phalanx's strength was also its fundamental vulnerability. The formation's power came from its uniformity. Every section was equally strong, equally deep, equally capable of holding the line. But this very equality meant that victory typically went to the side with superior numbers or better training. Against the Spartans, who possessed both advantages, such conventional tactics were suicide. The secret weapon that Epaminondas had devised would exploit the phalanx's rigid structure by creating massive local superiority at a single decisive point. Instead of matching the enemy formation with equal depth across the entire line, the Theban general had concentrated his best troops into a wedge of unprecedented thickness, 50 men deep compared to the standard 8. This revolutionary formation would become known to history as the oblique order, and it would change warfare forever. But the tactical innovation went beyond mere numbers. Epaminondas had positioned his elite sacred band, 300 pairs of lovers who had sworn to die rather than retreat, at the tip of this massive wedge. These warriors represented the cream of Theban military might, men whose personal bonds created a unit cohesion that rivaled even Spartan discipline. Behind them, rank upon rank of determined Theban citizens added weight and momentum to what would become an irresistible human avalanche. The genius of this formation lay not just in its concentrated power, but in its psychological impact. Traditional phalanx warfare was a grinding test of endurance where victory came through gradual attrition. Both sides would push against each other like rugby scrums until one formation finally cracked under pressure. But Epaminondas' oblique order was designed to achieve immediate, catastrophic breakthrough at a single point, creating panic and confusion that would ripple through the enemy ranks. As the two armies approached each other across the plain of Leuctra, seasoned veterans on both sides recognized that something unprecedented was about to occur. The Spartan formation advanced with their customary precision, King Ombrotus himself, Clay, leading from the traditional position of honor on the right wing. Their bronze armor gleamed in the morning light, and their disciplined step created a rhythm that had struck fear into enemies for generations. But the Theban formation approaching them defied every convention of Greek warfare. Instead of the expected symmetrical line, they presented a formation that seemed almost lopsided, thin on the right, massively thick on the left, with that unprecedented concentration of men creating a wedge that looked more like a battering ram than a traditional battle line. Spartan officers, trained from childhood in military theory, had never seen anything like it. The psychological warfare had already begun before the first spear was thrown. Spartan warriors, accustomed to facing enemies who fought according to familiar rules, now confronted an unknown tactical system that challenged their fundamental understanding of battle. The confidence that came from 2 centuries of victory began to waver as they realized they were entering uncharted territory. Epaminondas had spent months preparing his men for this moment, drilling them in the complex maneuvers required to execute his revolutionary strategy. The oblique order demanded perfect timing and coordination. The massive wedge had to strike with concentrated fury while the rest of the line held back, creating a carefully choreographed dance of advance and restraint that required extraordinary discipline from every participant. The morning air grew thick with tension as the distance between the armies narrowed. Dust clouds rose from thousands of marching feet, and the clatter of bronze equipment created a metallic symphony that had preceded countless ancient battles. But those who understood warfare recognized that this encounter would be different from any that had come before. The Spartans maintained their traditional formation, proven, reliable, seemingly invincible. But approaching them across that dusty plain was something entirely new, a tactical innovation that would either secure Theban independence or result in their complete destruction. There could be no middle ground in what was about to unfold. The stage was set for a collision that would determine not just the fate of 2 armies, but the future of Greek warfare itself. In moments, the secret weapon that Epaminondas had forged would meet the legendary Spartan phalanx in a test that would shatter military conventions and create new legends. The moment of impact arrived with devastating suddenness. As the 2 formations collided, the sound echoed across the battlefield like thunder splitting stone. The traditional Spartan right wing, accustomed to meeting enemies of equal depth, suddenly found themselves facing a wall of bronze and flesh that towered above their own ranks. 50 Theban warriors deep crashed into their 8-man formation with the force of an avalanche, striking a fence. The sacred band, positioned at the very tip of this human battering ram, fought with a ferocity that stunned even veteran Spartan warriors. These paired lovers, bound by oaths deeper than mere military discipline, carved through the front ranks of the enemy like a blade through silk. Behind them, rank after rank of Theban citizens added their weight to the assault, creating a momentum that no traditional formation could withstand. King Cleombrotus, leading the Spartan right wing according to ancient tradition, found himself at the epicenter of this tactical earthquake. The veteran monarch, who had commanded armies across Greece, watched in horror as his legendary phalanx began to buckle under pressure. Unlike anything in Spartan military history, the bronze-tipped spears that had dominated battlefields for centuries suddenly seemed inadequate against the crushing weight of Epaminondas' innovation. Within minutes of the initial collision, the unthinkable began to happen. The Spartan right wing, anchor of their formation and symbol of their military supremacy, started to give way. Warriors who had never known retreat found themselves being pushed backward by sheer overwhelming force. The rigid discipline that had made them invincible became a liability as they struggled to adapt to this unprecedented assault. The psychological impact proved as devastating as the physical blow. Spartan soldiers, raised from childhood to believe in their invincibility, suddenly confronted their own mortality in the most visceral way possible. The man beside them, a comrade who had trained alongside them since boyhood, crumpled under a Theban spear thrust. The shield wall that had protected them for generations began to fragment as warriors fell or were forced backward by the relentless pressure. Cleombrotus himself became a casualty of this tactical revolution. The Spartan king, fighting desperately to rally his crumbling right wing, took a mortal wound that would claim his life before the day ended. His fall sent shockwaves through the Spartan ranks, as soldiers watched their divinely appointed leader struck down by enemies they had expected to crush became fully apparent. While his massive wedge devastated the Spartan right, the rest, the genius of Epaminondas' strategy with ease. Meanwhile, and left wing, this tactical restraint prevented of his line, executed a carefully engagement with the stronger Spartan center. The oblique order had concentrated Theban strength against planned withdrawal, refusing numbers to bear where they might have made a difference, and the enemy from bringing their superior Spartan weakness while avoiding direct confrontation, whereof the Spartan right wing create the enemy held advantages. The collapsed a cascading failure throughout their entire formation. As the disciplined confidence that had characterized news of Cleombrotus's fall never to retreat found themselves in the impossible spread through the ranks, panic began to replace position of choosing between certain death and abandon their advantage with ruthless efficiency. These Spartan warfare for generations, warriors train, the sacred band precedoning their posts not just for victory but for the lives of their beloved elite Theban warriors, fighting companions, showed no mercy to the faltering Spart years preparing for this moment, knowing-uns. They had spent lavement of their homeland. Every spear thrust carried the weight of that defeat would mean not just personal death but the end's Theban independence. As the Spartan right wing disintegrated, the tactical formation that had dominated Greek warfare for over 2 centuries began its historic collapse. The phalanx system, once considered the pinnacle of military evolution, revealed its fatal flaw when confronted with truly revolutionary thinking. Epaminondas had proven that even the most successful military doctrine could be rendered obsolete by sufficiently innovative tactics. The battle's outcome was decided in those first crucial minutes of contact. What followed was not combat, but catastrophe, a systematic destruction of Spartan military power that would echo through ancient history. Warriors who had never known defeat found themselves fleeing from enemies they had dismissed as inferior. The crimson cloaks that had struck terror into enemies across the Mediterranean now served as targets for pursuing Theban spears. The broader implications of this tactical revolution extended far beyond a single battlefield. Military commanders throughout the Greek world would study the Battle of Leuctra for generations, recognizing that warfare itself had fundamentally changed. The oblique order demonstrated that concentrated force, properly applied, could overcome any enemy regardless of their reputation or traditional advantages. For Sparta, the defeat represented more than military failure. It marked the beginning of their decline as a great power. The aura of invincibility that had sustained their empire crumbled along with their phalanx formation. City-states that had submitted to Spartan dominance for generations suddenly saw opportunity in their former master's vulnerability. The secret weapon that had annihilated the Spartan phalanx was not a new type of sword or an innovative siege engine. It was something far more dangerous, a new way of thinking about warfare itself. Epaminondas had demonstrated that military genius lay not in perfecting existing systems, but in creating entirely new ones that rendered the old obsolete. As dust settled over the battlefield of Leuctra, the ancient world witnessed the birth of modern tactical thinking. The rigid formations and predictable strategies that had dominated warfare gave way to fluid, adaptive systems that emphasized innovation over tradition. The Spartan phalanx, once considered the ultimate military formation, had been relegated to history by a superior idea. The echoes of this tactical revolution would resonate through military history, inspiring future commanders to question established doctrine and seek innovative solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. From Alexander's hammer and anvil tactics to Napoleon's grand battery, the spirit of Leuctra lived on in every military innovation that followed. The Battle of Leuctra stands as history's ultimate testament to the power of revolutionary thinking over conventional wisdom. On that dusty plain in Boeotia, Epaminondas didn't just defeat an army, he shattered the very foundations of ancient warfare and proved that even the most legendary military machine could be rendered obsolete by a superior idea. The oblique order became warfare's great equalizer, demonstrating that tactical brilliance could triumph over centuries of tradition and supposed invincibility.